an adjustment after we changed the clocks. It's just bright as can be. I'm backlit and doesn't quite seem like evening yet. And I kind of forgot about that during all these months when it felt appropriate to be welcoming in Shabbat. But I have this image of the medieval Kabbalists in the north of the land of Israel. And we know that they would go out in all dressed in white, and they would go out into the lush green hills, and they would welcome Shabbat as a bride or a queen, as we sort of emulate when we come to that last verse of Lecha Dodi. And so I picture them outside with this sort of golden hour, and it's not dark in that vision, and maybe we can summon that sense of just joy and welcoming of this island in time, this time of peace and connection, as we now have the joy and the difference of welcoming in Shabbat when the sun is still shining. So I want to invite everyone to take a deep breath, create some spaciousness in yourself, physically and also emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Start by creating the physical space. Roll your shoulders back if you're able to do that. Make some room for breath to enter and make some room for Shabbat to enter. Kabbalat Shabbat, the receiving of Shabbat. Let's let in warmth and peace and most of all, connection. A couple deep breaths. Feel free, those on the Zoom, to leave in the chat a word or two about where you're coming from in the sense of where are you emotionally, spiritually? How are you feeling right now? How are you doing? I was listening to a meditation teacher named Tara Brock, and it was a recording of a Zoom talk she had given, and that's what she said. She said, leave 2 words. And I really feel that when we share those words, even in the chat, it connects us to each other. We know we have a sense of the energy in the room, even though we're not in a physical room together. I know we all miss that sense of really feeling who's in the room, what's happening for people. You can get a sense just from people's energy. So let's try to do that in the form of words as we create our Kehillah Kedosha, our sacred community for tonight. So this month is Women's History Month, and I thought that in honor of that, I would bring just a few words from the very well-known Israeli poet Zelda. She was known just by that one name, Zelda. She lived from 1914 to 1984. And she said, to light candles in all the worlds, that is Shabbat. To light Shabbat candles is a soul leap, pregnant with potential into a splendid sea. It is the mystery of the fire of sunset. Lighting the candles transforms my room into a river of light. My heart sets in an emerald waterfall. So with that kavanah, with that intention, feel free to bring candles into the screen if you have them. And let's think about the power of light even at a time when we don't need the light in the way that we did even a week ago, or in the darkness of winter. Think of how it was around Hanukkah time. How can we invite this light in? What might it mean for us when we don't need it in the sense of it being dark out right now? We're on page 2 in the digital prayer book. The link is in the chat, and you can follow along. If I can light this match. Sorry about that. Oh, this is a tricky one. Okay. Well, see, Shabbat sometimes takes a little bit more of an invitation. Luckily, literally at my right hand is my husband, Jethro, who is going to play along for this candle lighting blessing, and let's see what happens. They must have gotten wet. Okay, so anyone have candles? Oh, he's going to run and get some other matches, but if anyone, Lisa, you have a candle. If anyone else has Shabbat candles that you're lighting, I can sing the blessing along and you can have your candles out. Okay, I see Larry. Larry and Denise have their candles. So they're going to be our symbolic lighters for tonight. So maybe, Josh, you can spotlight their candles and I'm going to sing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Thank you to everyone who brought their light, and now mine are lit as well. Shabbat Shalom. Feel free to continue connecting through the chat and share a word or two about how you're feeling as we enter into Shabbat tonight. We're going to move into Shalom Aleichem on page 24. Rabbi Arthur Green wrote that the Hebrew word malach, and we sing Malachei Hasharet, from the word malach, it means messenger, and it's used in the Bible for both heavenly and earthly emissaries. All of us on Shabbat can become Malachei Shalom, messengers of peace to one another, as we share our inner quiet and joy in this day. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi-melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem leShalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi-melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So, going to move to Psalm 29 now. So, if you were here last week, then you've already experienced the wonders of technology as it relates to music for Shabbat. We are going to, by a series of amazing feats, have our much missed musical accompaniment by Andy O'Connell. And Josh, you'll spotlight my screen and Andy's screen, and you'll see how on earth is this going to work? We're not in the same house, but we're going to make it work and enjoy Psalm 29, Mizmor LeDavid, which we haven't sung for a long time until we brought it back last week. It's on page 18, and I do want to share just a word about this psalm, that many of the psalms that the Kabbalists brought in for the Kabbalat Shabbat service have incredible nature imagery. They're very vivid. And this one, notice how many times I sing the word kol. Kol means voice, but it can also mean a thunderclap. And this particular psalm celebrates the presence of God in the midst of a great thunderstorm. And then it concludes, though we don't sing through the whole thing, but if you're following along, you might look at the words. It concludes with mention of a great quiet that follows the storm. And Rabbi Art Green has written that that mirrors the busyness of our week, which mirrors the busyness of the act of creation as told in our sacred stories, and then that peace on that seventh day, and the peace that we take. We too are called upon to achieve that great inner quiet, which is the secret of great rest. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai bnei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo ishtachavu l'Adonai v'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim, Adonai al mayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach yailai, kol Adonai behadar, kol Adonai shover arazim, vayshaber Adonai et arze halvanon, vayarkidem kemo egel. Yai, lai, yai, lai, yai, lai, yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, lai.
Thank you, Rabbi Berkman, and thank you, Andy. It's wonderful to hear you singing and playing together. We turn to Lecha Dodi on page 20, and we'll sing together verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And you may not know that the first 8 stanzas of Lecha Dodi actually are an acrostic for the name of the author, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. And I want us to use this as a way to think about the little hints that may be out there in the world for us, the little signs that we don't notice that are pointing us to some secrets. And when we sing Lecha Dodi, it's just beneath the surface, the name of this author. And so to take this understanding out with us into the world this Shabbat, and to look for those little hints, those little signs of what is there just beneath the surface, waiting for us to discover. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9, and we'll rise together to welcome the Shabbat bride on the 9th stanza.
Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, alalai, 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, alalai, 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 pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולצילה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, יללי, 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 פני שבת נקבלה. Lecha Dodi לקראת כלה, יללי, 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 פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5, התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בנה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, ילדי, 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 בני שבת נקבלה. Thank you so much, Jethro. It's great to have so many fabulous musicians, both in my own family and in the congregation, and so glad that we can hear from Jethro and from Andy tonight. We're going to move to our song of awe, I guess ah also. So we say ah and oh, wow, and yeah, sure, our song of awe and our psalm of awe. And let's harvest up the awe and wonder. I know that some folks are getting vaccinated, and that is feeling like certainly a feeling of awe when that happens, recognizing how much had to happen to bring us to that moment. Anything else anyone want to share? Anyone or two folks want to share aloud? Anything that's brought you a sense of wonder this week? Okay, if you don't want to share aloud, you can share in the chat. Go ahead,
Yes.
Susan.
Yeah, speaking to my grandson in Japan.
You spoke
By
to
video.
Noah. Amazing. I can attest to how cute he is. I've seen pictures. And he must be getting very big,
Yeah.
relatively. All right. Does anyone else want to share? All right. So feel free to drop it in the chat so that we can all share in your awe, and we'll sing our Ma Gadlu round. We're at the top of page 342. Magadlu, Masecha Thank you, Jethro. Thank you to everybody sharing your moments of awe and wonder.
You might wonder why we bend our knees for the Baruch. Well, I've been spending a lot of time at the dog park lately with Ruby. And one of the things you learn is that when you're surrounded by many dogs running around is that you better keep your knees bent, because otherwise you are going to get knocked over or a torn ACL. And it's a sign of preparedness, of being aware, and also of being humble. And so I invite us to take those intentions with us as we rise for the call to worship, to be prepared, to be aware, and to be humbled as we unmute ourselves. And Rabbi Berkman leads us in the call to worship on page 28.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
We're welcome to be seated. So it is a little strange this week to be praying Ma'ariv, the evening service, when it is so bright out all of a sudden. And I don't know about you, but I found myself this week missing the darkness, not quite ready to embrace all this sunlight and daylight all of a sudden. And it has given me a much greater appreciation for the sense of quiet and the sense of peace that comes when the evening arrives. And so we join together in blessing God, who brings upon that evening and brings upon that peace at the bottom of page 30.
Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uben laila Adonai tzevaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Hamari v'aravi. We're on page 32 as we prepare to recite the Shema, and it's taught that the Shema is enveloped in love because we have this blessing, Ahavat Olam, everlasting love, right before we say the Shema, and we have V'ahavta, you shall love. And that passage, that's also part of the Shema. So the Shema, the line or the two lines that we say are in a little love sandwich. And let's say our love blessing, just the conclusion here. Ki hem chayenu v'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. Before we say the Shema, I want to share a teaching from Rabbi Yael Levy. She notes that we hear the Shema Yisrael, listen Israel, and then v'ahavta, you will love. Listen and you will love. That might be the way to translate Shema and v'ahavta. She's a teacher of mindfulness and meditation, so she teaches that this means pay attention. That the v'ahavta says pay attention, be mindful as you sit in your house and as you walk on your way. Pay attention, listen as you rest and as you go forth, and notice, be aware of your words, actions, responses, and you will develop the capacity to meet with love whatever life brings. So the Shema here is going to call us into a deep kind of listening, into presence and mindfulness as we say it together. And you can unmute for this as well if you would like. Shema Yisrael
Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Melchuto Leolam Vayed
And we're on page 36 for V'ahavta. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בעם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
So you may have heard that Passover is just a little bit more than a week away. And I'm curious how your Passover preparations are going. We're not going to unmute right now because I don't have time for a full therapy session for everybody. But some people started weeks ago ordering their food, planning their meals, figuring out who they were going to Zoom with. And some people are just realizing right now that Passover is a week away. And I had my moment of panic this week when I realized, where am I going to get a shank bone? Where am I going to get my charoset? Can I go to Mamala's and still order my Seder kit? I calmed down a little bit and I realized that no matter what, Passover is going to get here. We're going to get to experience freedom. We are going to get to experience redemption. And right now, as we sing Micha Mocha, we get a little glimpse of that, a little glimpse into the freedom that we get to experience next week. And I hope everybody will join us the second night so that we can experience that all together. We're on page 40 for Micha Mocha.
Micha Mocha Ba'ilim Adonai מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נורא תהילות עושי פלא נורא תהילות עושי פלא מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים זה אלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Close your eyes, picture yourself having just crossed the sea and the sense of awe and relief and gratitude and perhaps some disbelief is in you and around you. Yai dai da dai dai, yai da da dai dai da da dai, yai dai da dai, yai da da dai dai dai, yai dai da dai dai, ya da dai dai da da dai, ya dai dai, yai dai, yai dai, ya da dai, yai dai.
Turn together to page 42 for Chashkivenu, to ask God to bring peace to us and to spread a shelter of peace over us. I know my feeling as I hear about more and more people getting vaccinated is that this Sukkot Shalom, the shelter of peace, is being spread very slowly, further and further out, and that hopefully so many of us will have experienced this, that we all get to live under a shelter of peace and health and wellness. We turn to Hashkivenu on page 42.
And thank you, Andy, for joining on this as well. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom v'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim השכיבנו Adonai Eloheinu לשלום והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום. I feel more peaceful hearing Andy's beautiful guitar music, so thank you so much, Andy.
We turn to the Amidah, which begins on page 46. And as we prepare to rise, I want to appreciate for a moment that this is the second to last Shabbat where we have a chance to pray for rain and wind. And maybe you haven't been appreciating all of the rain and the wind that we've had this winter. But it has brought so much water to our state, which has needed it so badly for the last year. And it has been amazing to walk around Jamaica Pond and all of our waterways and to see them filled up with water and to know that we are not in a drought. And so as we rise for the Amidah, which begins on page 46, to just bring our attention to that second blessing of the Amidah and to ask for rain for the second to last time before we transition to that prayer for dew.
Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Velohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו ביהבה. מלך חוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם, ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, who makes the wind blow and who brings down the rain. מחלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים כל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please continue with your private prayer. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. May the maker of peace, source of all life and blessing, enable us to make peace within us and between us. And let us say, Amen. At this time, we'll have a chance to pray for healing of body or spirit. I know that very much on our minds is the horrible mass shooting that took place in Atlanta this week. We think of those who were injured in body and in spirit, and later we'll remember those who were killed. We can not imagine the trauma suffered by those who witnessed this devastation, and we pray that they may, in their brokenness, achieve some kind of wholeness and healing. We hold in our hearts all those who are suffering from COVID-19, and I know that many of us are holding many people in our hearts. So if you would like to share names, as I see are coming through now in the chat, in that way we bring them into this virtual sanctuary, whether or not we hear them aloud. And I also invite those not on Zoom to say the name or names of those for whom you are praying for healing of body or spirit. Say those names aloud, even if you're alone in your home. I think that there's power to that and helps bring them into our virtual sanctuary. At this time, those who are connected to our community that I would like to name are Anita Kulik, Judy Goldberg, Eileen Schwartz, Tammy Griffin, Richard and Margit Hershey, Karen Shea, Doug and Mila Krynick, Mitch Balin, Aaron Page, Sydney Jean Pisetsky, and all those who have been mentioned or in our hearts, those we've mentioned aloud, those we've mentioned in the Zoom chat. May they know complete healing of body and spirit, and may they be in good hands, taken well care of by skilled caregivers and by loving hearts. And let us say, Amen. So it's been a treat for me as I've been leading a weekly discussion and mindfulness practice on Thursday mornings, to which every one of you is welcome any week that you can make it. We look at the Torah portion each week from a particular stance of mindfulness, and we connect it to what our hearts and souls might need, and we do a guided meditation based on it. And all credit goes to Rabbi Yael Levy, whose book was the inspiration for this offering. So it's been a treat for me because I feel very rooted in the Torah portion, having already discussed it in a beautiful, heartful way with those who've been coming on Thursday mornings. So some of you who are with me on Thursday, who were with me this last Thursday morning, I want to thank you for some of your inspiration for some of this. So the book of Exodus, we concluded last week. Would you believe we've already come through two whole books of Torah, and this week we enter a third, Leviticus, known in Hebrew as Vayikra, which has nothing to do with the word Leviticus. It means, and he called. And it's the same name as our Torah portion, and he called, meaning God called to Moses and then instructed him. A lot of that happens throughout Torah, and especially here. So when we complete a book of Torah, as we did last Shabbat morning at our Shabbat morning service where we read Torah, our voices rise together when we get to the end of the book. And traditionally we say together, Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek, which translates as be strong, and may we be strong together, or may we be strengthened. And as we move from one book to another, from one Shabbat to the next, we remind ourselves that in this tradition which binds us together, which is symbolized, but of course not limited to, it's symbolized by, but not limited to, the wisdom that's contained in the Torah scroll. We remind ourselves that we're strengthened by our relationship to Torah, and also that we will be strong, that we engage with Torah, with tradition together. I love that the form of that verb, nitchazek, is we. It's the first person plural. It's in the context of community that we glean insight and wisdom for how to live our lives. It's also in the context of community that we create wisdom. As we wrestle with whatever challenges and joys come to us in our lifetimes, in our generational time, we create wisdom together as we seek to solve problems, as we seek to wonder and celebrate the beauty of this world. As I often say, I believe that when we engage with the tradition that has been handed down to us through millennia, we create more Torah out of our unique voices, which are in conversation with one another and with what's been handed down to us. So from that perspective of a blessing for communal strength that we said last week as we finished the book of Exodus, I invite us tonight to reflect upon how Torah in its broadest sense, our traditions, our stories, our learning, our culture of our people, has strengthened us and kept us connected over the past year of physical distance and social isolation. What might we learn from this week's Torah portion about what is necessary to keep us close and connected and strong? At the end of the book of Exodus, the Mishkan, which means literally the dwelling place for the divine, has been constructed according to intricate, detailed instructions. And now we move from the where will the Israelites experience a sense of connection to the divine, to the how. What is the spiritual technology, so to speak, that is necessary to sustain this newly forged relationship between God and the Israelites, specifically as they will be traveling through a vast wilderness for an unknown amount of time? All manner of detail is given in the book of Leviticus about sacrifices, not only, but including animal sacrifices, which is one among several reasons why the book of Leviticus is not many people's favorite book. Many of us living today are a little bit put off by what I was saying on Thursday was sort of the blood and guts of Leviticus. There are details about bodily fluids and lots of blood. And when a bar bat mitzvah kid realizes that they have a parsha from the book of Leviticus, it takes some doing to, there have been exceptions, but sometimes it takes some special coaching to help them realize that, in fact, this is a great blessing, because the book of Leviticus, though it has so much detail related to practices that we do not have today, can teach us so much. So what is this spiritual technology? What is sacrifice really about? So they're offerings up, right? They are come from a feeling or a motivation of giving back and offering up. I like to think of it as a welling up of gratitude. The same way that the words of the song at the sea, including Mi Chamocha, were sang, I think, out of a welling up of incredible gratitude and awe and relief. I think that the system of sacrifices and wanting to give back, which of course is present in many cultures and wasn't just present in the ancient Near East, comes from a sense ultimately of wanting to give back as a way of connecting with what is transcendent and mysterious, with the divine. So there are many types of sacrifices in the book of Leviticus, and because it often makes people's eyes glaze over, including mine, I'm not going to go through the whole list of all the types of sacrifices. But it's interesting because some of them are for gratitude, and some of them are because you've done something wrong intentionally or unintentionally. And some of them, you can imagine, come up out of anxiety, out of regret. There's specific purposes and types of sacrifices in this book. And sacrifice in Hebrew comes from the same root as the word to draw close. Korban is the word, korbanot in the plural, and karov is the word for close. And much, much, much has been said about the connection of sacrifice and a sense of drawing close. We often talk about it as a way that our ancestors and that we now who use prayer in place of animal sacrifice and other kinds of sacrifice, we draw close to God. But I actually think there's a lot of wisdom here about the ways that it draws us close together to each other. So, traveling through the desert wilderness, our ancestors sought closeness and connection with some power outside it, but also within themselves, and I think ultimately between themselves. And we in our own wilderness, a metaphor that seemed particularly apt a year ago, that continues to be so in this pandemic wilderness, I think about the ways in which we strive for closeness and connection with a sense of power, a sense of connectedness, that which interconnects us, that which transcends us, that which undergirds all of life and all of being. So in our Torah for the Heart and Mind group, we explored the wisdom of this interpretive translation by Rabbi Yael Levi. And the focus that she brought to it was really, what do we have to offer up of ourselves to ourselves and to others? What do we have within us to offer up fully and honestly in order to live in alignment with Torah, with our highest wisdom, and in order to live in holy community? So I excerpted a little bit here to quickly share with you. She wrote, remember, this is a translation specifically for this parsha. Okay, so this is her poetic, interpretive rendering of what's going on right here as we enter the book of Leviticus. And she writes, remember that your life is a gift, and everything you are and everything you have been given is yours to share. Make your life an offering and draw close to me. Give thanks, offer gratitude for the bounty and the blessings. Look for opportunities to be grateful. Acknowledge moments of well-being. Engage in forgiveness. Acknowledge the hurt and pain you have caused. And let this awareness guide you in seeking healing and repair. Practice compassion and understanding. Let it release you from anger, resentment, and regret. Honor your gifts. Enjoy your uniqueness. Make an offering of your talents, your distinctions, your vulnerabilities and delights. Let yourself be known. The way through the wilderness is confusing. It is easy to get lost. Draw close, the mystery calls. Many people in the group noticed that she says here, make an offering of our talents, of our gifts, but also of our vulnerabilities. Brene Brown, the contemporary social worker and researcher, has written a lot about vulnerability and the ways that we need to be open and honest and vulnerable with each other. And I think there's some wisdom here, even in the book of Leviticus. When we offer ourselves in all of our holy wholeness, when we share our gifts and our doubts, our strength and our vulnerabilities with one another, we not only create a mishkan, a place for holiness to dwell, but we draw close, and in drawing close, we strengthen one another. As we say, chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. And just this afternoon, I received a copy of a Devar Torah that Larry Green, who's here tonight, gave 5 years ago, so this predates me. And it actually struck me how much what I was trying to get at is something that Larry said, but I want to just quote him for one moment because I like this particular line. And he too is pointing out that we all have something to offer as part of a community, and points out that the sacrifices were not offered in individual homes. Even when the Israelites were settled in the land and had a temple, they were always offered at that communal place, at the temple. And the sacrifices were offered at the communal place, at the Mishkan, in the center of the camp, wherever the Israelites dwelled in the wilderness. And Larry wrote, each of us brings knowledge, experience, skills, and passions to Temple Ohabei Shalom. And when we share these gifts with one another, we learn from one another. We obtain spiritual and intellectual enrichment from one another, and we become a stronger, more sacred community. All of this brings us closer to God, individually and collectively. So Larry, thank you for giving words as I was trying to think of my, how I was going to bring this all together. There came your Devar Torah, time traveling from 5 years ago. And I want to close by saying my blessing for us as we've crossed the 1 year mark of living in a pandemic with all of its distances and losses is that we draw close to one another and to the mystery within, around, and among us by offering each other up in all of our holy wholeness, our broken parts, our whole parts, our doubts, our strengths, and in so doing, we strengthen one another in our community. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom and Yesher Koach, Rabbi Berkman. Let's take that Torah and offer it up as an offering as we say a Misha Berach, a prayer for healing, for all the names that we mentioned earlier, for all the names that are on our hearts and our minds, and all the people that we are praying for in the broader world and in our community. And the prayer for healing can be found on page 253 in our prayer book.
Yes, and we mentioned those names and we took those names in the chat, and I forgot to sing it. And Andy's joining us, so we're definitely going to sing it. And we held them in our hearts before, but we're going to bring them back in. And here we go with Andy. Sheberach Avotenu Mekor Habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need, may the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. So we're holding those names in our hearts at this time as we listen to this beautiful music, and we send out healing energy to all those we've named and all those we don't know. Sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. And let us say Amen. We move to Aleinu and then on to Mourner's Kaddish. We're on page 282. Please rise in body or spirit as we remember that it is Aleinu, it is upon us, it is our responsibility to work for healing in this world, and to recognize that we are all connected by a source that transcends us, a mystery, and that we are responsible to one another. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. I know that there are many people here who are observing a yard site, and also some here who are in a period of mourning. I want to especially mention that the mother of Edwin Salamanca, Luz Maria Salamanca, died yesterday. She was the mother-in-law of Karen Weber, and I'm so sorry to both of you, Karen and Edwin, and to your whole family. We extend our condolences to you. May her memory be a blessing. Would anyone who's saying Kaddish for a yard site or in a period of mourning, please unmute yourself to share names. You can actually, maybe we have a big enough group that you should signal me, and I'll ask you to unmute and you can share a name. If you're not comfortable sharing aloud, you can share it in the chat.
Can I share a name?
Yes, Esther.
Okay, so Kitty, my adopted family cat, and also Norma Evans, my grandmother.
Thank you, Esther. May their memory be a blessing. Diane.
Our beloved cantor, Jody Scheckman, who died this week, and the iconic Boston marathoner, Dick Hoyt, and also was a triathlete who pulled his son, Rick, on a boat tied around his waist for the swim part.
Wow, may their memory be a blessing. Hugh.
Thank you.
My brother, Dr. Dan Kaplan, who died 1 year ago.
May his memory be a blessing.
Okay.
Spence. Spence, you're muted, so I'll come back to you in a minute. Anyone else?
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
My nephew Daniel Martin Leftman, and longtime congregant Helen Burke. Thank you.
Rabbi, my mother, Norma Weber.
Norma Weber. May her memory continue to be a blessing. We have our yard site list here from our community up on the screen. Being such a historic community, we have many names each week, and it's really a beautiful thing to be able to connect with these names in our bulletin, and now here in our bulletin on the screen. May the memory of all those we have mentioned, as well as those women who were murdered, women and man, I believe it was one man, someone can correct me, who were murdered in Atlanta, be a blessing. And of course, we continue to think of Peter Feldman lovingly and to hold him in our hearts. And I'm sorry, Lisa, to hear of the death of your aunt. May her memory be a blessing. We recite Mourner's Kaddish. You can rise as is your custom. We're on page 294. Yitkadal veyitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirute ve'amlich malchute. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'v'zman kori ve'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shmei d'kudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. tushbechata v'nechamata, ta'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. I'll hand it over to Rabbi Schaefer to share some announcements.
I'm excited about all of the offerings coming up in the next week. Please join me tomorrow morning at 10:30 for Torah study, which will be on Zoom. And next Monday night, we have a German Jewish cooking class with the authors of the German Jewish Cookbook. We hope you can get your ingredients, join us, do some cooking together as we get ready for Passover. And of course, Passover begins on Saturday night, and our second night Seder is on Sunday, March 28th. There's still time to register, and we hope that you'll join us for that. Rabbi Berkman's class, Torah for the Heart and Mind, is on Thursday at 9 a.m. And next Friday night, we have a special Friday night service. We're going to be joined by Meredith Christ as she celebrates her bat mitzvah, and she is going to be live from the sanctuary, I believe, joining us, teaching us next Friday night, and it should be a wonderful Shabbat service. Just looking ahead a little bit longer, I want to put on people's radars that on the last day of Passover, on Saturday morning, April 3rd, we're going to hold a Yizkor service, and so if you wanted the opportunity to say Kaddish, to say Yizkor for your loved ones, we hope you'll join us that Saturday morning at the end of Passover. We have a lot more exciting things coming up for Yom HaShoah, Yom HaAtzmaut, all the amazing things happening this spring. So keep checking the website and reading your newsletter for all those details.
Thank you, Rabbi Schaefer. And I wanted to just add, so Meredith Christ, who's joining us next Friday night in leading, was our first pandemic bat mitzvah. Came very quickly. Her scheduled date was very, very soon after we shut down and went virtual. And so she did do some of what she had prepared, including her Torah reading in the sanctuary at that time virtually, and then decided that she'd wait until the Torah portion came around again for her to give her Devar Torah, which is really, really wonderful. And she is now a year older and that much wiser and has a lot to share, and will be a really nice addition to our Friday night. So some of our Friday night will look like a regular service, and some of it will be Meredith leading us and singing. So that should be wonderful. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that on that last day of Passover, when we have our Yizkor, our memorial service, as is traditional on the last day of Passover, you may be thinking, isn't the last day of Passover Sunday, the 8th day? Well, it depends on which Jew you ask, right? So in the Reform community, we observe 7 days. And so we are going to hold a last day of Passover service where we also will sing Hallel, which are really fun, wonderful psalms of praise. So we'll have some extra singing and joy, as well as the Yizkor service. So, and then we also wanted to mention there's some food drive information that Rabbi Schaefer put here in the chat. But for those who can't see the chat, I'll say that we have a 1-year anniversary drive-through food drive to benefit clients of the Brookline Food Pantry. And that's taking place next Saturday, the 27th. And you can drop off food from 9 to 12. But the earlier the better. And the drop-off location is at Brookline High School. And you can look for signs designating the food drop-off spot. So the needs of folks who have been really financially challenged by this past year are certainly stronger than ever, and we need to keep giving. And our Social Action Committee is focusing a lot on the cause of alleviating hunger however possible. So please do join in that initiative, and thank you, Spence, for bringing that to our attention. So we're going to move to make Kiddush and Motzi. If you want to join along at home, please do. And please rise and we'll be on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu v'acharta, v'yotanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'yahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha'shabbat. Amen. L'chaim, everyone. And Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We're going to conclude our service tonight with a recording. Again, it's Andy O'Connell. This is just audio, but we'll put the words up on the screen. Olam chesed yibaneh. We'll build this world of chesed, of loving and caring and kindness for each other. So please do sing along, and please feel free, those on Zoom, to stay after the service and greet one another. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. 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 I will build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. And you must build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai, then God will build this world from love. Yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, 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 yadadai, dai, dai, yadadai, dai. So we're going to say goodbye to those on the live stream, and I want to just thank Andy O'Connell again for his beautiful music, and thank you, Josh Cohen, for tech, and thank you, everyone, for being here.
Alleluia.